And with me right now is Ruth Turvey. Turvey, thank you very much. Ruth Turvey, who is a member of the All Women's Pioneer Post, and you're a World War II veteran. Now tell us where you were at and what were you doing when Pearl Harbor happened?
Oh, I was born and raised in Montana, Dry Lawn Farm, and I got the chance to come to Oregon right after, about a year after I graduated from high school. My dad had died. And so we came back, my sister and her husband lived here. So we got back here to Salem about 5 days before war was declared.
Oh, wow.
And so it wasn't within a week or two that all the men around there, I call them boys, but all the men around there were in the service.
Right.
And so then my sister and I went to work for Union Oil service stations. And we were going to be managers, and we got shipped to Eugene, and she got her managership, but I was to wait for the man that was manager where I was working to go to service, and he never went, and here come these real nice-looking recruiting Marine girls, and so I joined up.
Okay, so you joined the Marines, huh?
Yep.
And here she is. Can we get the camera on that? You look outstanding. Were you flirting with the cameraman? That's a really great picture. And when was this taken? In 42 or 43?
43 and 44.
Okay.
When I enlisted to go to Hunter College in New York. And the recruiting girls told me. And so then I had to wait for about 2 or 3 months before I got my orders.
Did you go to a separate Marine boot camp? Because I understand lots of Navy waves went to Hunter College during World War II
and there
as well.
were just a few Marines there. And by the time I got my orders, shipping orders, we all went to Chicago. From all over the country. That train was the longest train you ever saw.
Now tell us your job. Once you got out of boot camp, they gave you a job. And tell us about this photo here.
After boot camp, I was shipped to Camp Pendleton in Oregon. And being as I had service training before for the service station, that was my job. I worked at the camp service.
Okay, so literally your civilian job was the same thing as you did in the military. Right. I see.
Except you drove all the trucks, and some of the guys, mostly convoys, came in there and you had to fill them up and kind of help the Marines learn how to run those big trucks.
I see. And here you are in your work uniform, is that right? Which would have been typical Marine woman issue back then?
That was.
Yeah, because I've never seen that kind of hat before, so that's really interesting. So if you're not doing office work, you're out in the field really doing some muscles. This would be what a cutie, what a cutie. Now, how many years were you in the military?
This was in boot camp.
Oh, that was actually a boot camp photo.
Yeah, and this is after I got out.
Oh, okay. Did you endure boot camp? I thought boot camp at the time I went through at 18 was the hardest thing I'd ever went through.
I enjoyed it.
Did you?
I was raised on a farm, and I was used to it.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot of people. It was a real new experience for me because I had never been around very much.
Now, what did your folks think? You said your father had passed away. What did your mom think when you told her, "Mom, I'm joining the Marines"?
Well,
was she kind of startled?
Like I say, I had 2 uncles in World War I, and then my brother, my oldest brother, joined the Army in just before about 1940 out here, and he got in the 41st Division when they activated it. And so these 2 men that was running above me in the service station, well, I kept saying, well, if we have to go, you're going too. Why don't you have to go? And I said, okay, I will. But I never thought I would. So then when we got shipped to Eugene for the service station, I saw these gals, and I thought, why not?
Right. Well, it sounds like you were very well prepared for that. Now, when did you get out of the Marine Corps? After the end of the war or previous to?
No, I got out in 1944.
Was that because you were married? Because I know okay, I've heard this story repeated many times, that once you got married, they didn't want you in the military anymore.
I got a 499. I was married and pregnant.
Oh, okay.
That's a 499.
Right.
I was down there in San Diego, and we had construction jobs and laid blacktop and all that stuff. And then in about 1945, I came back to Oregon because my oldest son was ready to go to school. And we were living up in the mountains and forests. And so I said, I'm staying in one spot. So I had a lot of nice experiences before that, but then I lived in Salem. The kids started school. Were
you able to use your GI Bill, or you got busy on the mommy track?
I got busy on the mommy track. And then
I went like a lot of women veterans, yeah.
Then I went to work with, my husband was in construction, and he had his own business. And then I went to work for a magazine place. And I was there for 45 years before they sold out.
Thank you for serving in the military for the couple of years you did. And thank you for continuing to help vets in your way through the American Legion.
I wanted to tell you
Thank you. God bless you. And I have here Fern Burkholder, who's a veteran of World War II. Tell us how you went into the military. That's something all women get asked. Why did you go in? I mean, clearly we weren't drafted. So how did you find yourself in the Army?
Well, I wasn't quite 18 during Pearl Harbor. And at that time, I wanted to go into the service. And I wondered why women were not allowed. But by the time I was of age, it took me a while.
Did you come from a military family?
No, I didn't. But you had to be 21 when I joined.
Oh, really?
I joined at age 20 with my parents' consent.
Oh, okay. Now, when I went in, you just had to be 18. You had to be 21 back then.
This was World War II.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Yes, this was before the WACS, WAAC, even was formed.
Oh, okay.
So, but by the time I got into it, it was strictly WAC.
Now, how did your parents feel about that?
They did not object. They didn't mind. They signed aloud, let me go in.
And where did you go to boot camp?
Des Moines, Iowa.
And how long were you in there?
6 weeks during boot camp, and I was in the service 2 years.
Now, mine was 10 weeks of torture. And I'm being real diplomatic saying it like that. Well, Fern, when you got out of boot camp, did you get any kind of special training?
Yes, I was sent to Army Air Base, Bombardier School. I started working on bomb sites, and I was sent to bomb site school in Denver, Colorado. I spent 4 months training there. And I was...
Now, what were they training you for?
Because the Norden bomb site. I was a mechanic on the Norden bomb site.
Well, wow, this is sort of blows me away, because when I went in 71, they wouldn't have dreamed of having me do anything like that. It was all administrative work or medical, but I guess during World War II, it was an all-out effort, and everybody better know to do their part.
Not necessarily. When I switched stations from Carlsbad, New Mexico to Big Spring, Texas, the guy in charge of bomb sites tried to put me in the office doing paperwork. But my MOS, which is my was bomb site, he couldn't do it, so I was able to stay at my bomb site.
Now, what exactly did you, I mean, that's just so foreign to me. Tell us exactly, what did you do at bomb site?
Well, bomb sites were in the airplanes.
Okay.
And 24 hours, we'd go out into the plane and give the bomb site check and do any work that needed to be done.
Okay. So
after 50 hours, it would come into the shop, and we'd do a 50-hour maintenance on it.
So is this the early infancy of what we now call the Air Force?
Yes.
Well, this was Army Air Corps.
I was in the Air Corps.
Oh, okay.
There is a difference.
Yes, there is. Yes, there. So I assume you actually got on the planes and...
Yes.
Well, that's just wonderful, because that would have just been inconceivable for me to have that offered to me when I went in the Navy in '71. It was like, I had the worst typing score of anybody in the entire Navy. It didn't matter. I was going to be a yeoman. Okay. Now, before our time runs out, Fern has brought some really wonderful photographs to share. You all know that I'm vision impaired here. Fern, tell us what you're doing here in this picture here.
That's working on a bomb site.
Oh, okay. And then you have some
Bomb
more.
site was in two different parts. They had an upper and a lower, and this, I think, would be, here's a better view of it.
This really reminds me of the Rosie the Riveter photographs. Fern, yeah. And this is a really lovely picture of you, Fern. Isn't she a babe? Isn't that wonderful? You really ought to get a gazillion copies of these for your children and grandchildren. This is going to be shown in the month of May during Mother's Day. I encourage everyone who's got a mama that's a veteran, give them an extra flower or hug or something, because they not only served us as children, they served their countries as well. So give them an extra special Mother's Day present. That's just lovely. I want to thank Fern for serving our country during World War II, and thank you for being a guest on Veterans Forum. Now, Ruth, tell us when you went in the military and why. I mean, I don't care what woman, I was constantly asked, why did you do that? So here I am asking you, why did you do that? Why did you join the Army?
Because the war was going on, World War II, and I did not have any brothers to enlist, so I enlisted. I was working at the time, and I joined in actually in '43, but I didn't leave until '44 when I joined a troop train from Boston that went down to Fort Oglethorpe for basic training.
Fort Oglethorpe. Okay, you're going to have to excuse me. I'm Navy here, and I'm not from. And where is this Fort O?
in Georgia.
In Georgia.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not familiar too much with Georgia, except people told me it's hotter than you know what in the summertime. And what do you remember about boot camp?
It was more or less a lot of exercise and so forth.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I
remember
liked
being
it.
quite shocked that I was supposed to learn so much. I had watched too many old World War II movies where all you saw them do was dig ditches, and I was supposed to be able to identify all the ships and subs and all this stuff. I was just floored. Now, when you got out of boot camp, did you get any special training?
No, I had signed up to as a clerk typist, and I was to go to Fort George G. Meade in Maryland.
Oh, okay.
And I was there until VJ Day, actually, and then they sent us all to Camp Adair in Oregon. So I did go from coast to coast.
Oh, okay. So you basically did a lot of typing and stuff, and at the tail end of your enlistment or the tail end of the war, they sent you to Oregon?
Yes, Camp Adair. It's no longer there.
I was going to say, I never heard of it.
It was near Corvallis and Salem.
Oh, okay. And is that what brought you to the Pacific Northwest?
Well, no. Right after the war, I did get married to a veteran.
And was he from this area?
No, he was from Missouri, so then
okay. So you've really crisscrossed the country.
Yes.
Let's see your pictures before we cut away. You brought some really nice pictures. Oh, Ruth, what a babe. I mean, she looks like a movie star. Doesn't she look like a movie star there? I imagine you just had dates out the gump stump, huh?
No, just the one.
Yeah. Now, I dated a long time before I chose one. I had a lot of fun dating different guys. The problem was if they were at sea, just by the time I was getting to like them, they'd say toodaloos, babe. And by the time they got back, I was with somebody else. So. Now, did you meet your husband in the Army?
Yes, I did. Before he went overseas and then when he came back. And so I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't ask you, how did your folks respond to you going in the Army?
Well,
how did they feel about that? I mean, you mentioned that you didn't have any brothers, so did you feel kind of like, gee, you had to do your bit for the war for lack of a brother?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And I went and signed up with a friend that, who, by the way, is still living in in Washington here.
Oh, good.
And, she's 95.
Oh, wow.
And she was a recruiter. But no, my mother knew it, but I didn't tell my father until after I did, and he thought it was really nice that I had done that.
Yeah, well, it was a little late for him to say otherwise once you were sworn in. Kind of sneaky there. Well, Ruth, did you have anything outstanding in your memory banks about your Army time that you want to share before we come to an end
Well,
here?
I worked in the Adjutant General's office all the time, so that it was interesting.
Yeah, I bet. You must have saw some top brass come in and out of there, huh?
Once in a while. So,
Yeah, I would imagine so.
So it was an interesting time.
Well, I hope you wrote all these stories down for your children or your nieces and nephews, because these stories get forgotten if you don't write them down. And then next is Lorri Gilchrist, who is in the Navy, and unlike myself, where I got my college after the Navy, she had her college before the Navy, so I believe you're my first Navy officer. I'm happy to have you, Lorri.
Thank you.
I don't believe I've ever met a woman veteran who could say their mother was also a woman in the military, a veteran. So Lorri, since your mother arrived on the planet before you did, let's talk about Mom. Where did she grow up? Was her father in the military? I mean, why did she go into the military?
She graduated very young from high school. She was just barely 16, and she went to business college first.
Okay.
I think she went in the military because she went to nursing school in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia was a big area for Navy back in the early 1940s, late 1930s.
Yes.
And she was already a nurse and became a nurse at Philadelphia Naval Hospital.
Oh, okay.
And
You have a picture there of her in her nursing uniform?
yes, first I have a picture of her as an ensign,
Uh-huh.
and then I have a picture of her as a nurse.
Now, she went in during World War II.
Yes, ma'am. She was first at Philadelphia Naval Hospital, then she went to Oak Knoll Naval Hospital in San Francisco and was there for Victory in Japan Day.
Oh, okay.
And has told me that the place went crazy.
I would imagine so.
Yes.
I would imagine so. So how many years do you think she was in? 2, 3?
She was in for 6.
Oh, she was in for 6.
After
Oh, okay.
that, she went to Puerto Rico, San Juan Naval Hospital in Puerto Rico, and that's where she met my father.
Okay.
He was a naval aviator, and he was her patient.
Oh, okay.
So
That
it's-
sounds like a movie.
Yes.
Okay. And I hope you're going to tell me they had a long, happy marriage.
Yes, ma'am, they
Oh, okay,
did.
good. Wonderful. Now, both your parents were in the Navy. Were their parents in the military as well, your grandparents?
My father's father, I have letters from him from the trenches in World War I, 1918. He was in the Army.
Uh-huh.
But that's the only person.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a long history. Hold her picture up and introduce her to us again.
Her name is Emma Pauline Haldeman Gilchrist,
Okay.
and she was born in Pennsylvania.
And when she got out of the military, did she immediately join the American Legion, or was that something she did after she raised her family?
It was after she raised us. She really loved the military. She came to every one of my duty stations. She really supported me. She wished she could go back in.
Okay.
But she was at the era when you got married, you had to get out.
Right.
And
right.
so
Well, tell us, did you know from a little girl that you were going to do what Mom and Dad did, that you were going to join the Navy as well? When did it hit you that you were going to join the Navy?
well, when I was a junior in college, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
Oh, okay.
And Mother said, well, what about the military? My cousin, who was like my sister, they raised her also. She had gone in the Navy, and we'd gone to visit her and heard about her career. And so my thing then, in the early 70s, was equal pay for equal work.
Yes, ma'am.
And I thought, if I go in the military, I'll get equal pay for equal work. Well,
Right.
it was equal pay for 120% worth of work. But
Right. So
Always
really, it
had
was
to
your
go home.
cousin that kind of influenced you more.
Encouraged me, yeah.
Right. And what was your degree in when you went to college?
It was a form of political science degree,
Oh, okay.
international relations, because I combined political science, economics, language, and law.
Well, I would have think the Navy was very glad to see you walk through that recruiting station. That's quite a degree. Now, when did you go in, Lorri?
In 1974, and it's funny you said the recruiter, because the two questions he asked were, do you drink coffee, and how much do you weigh? And I disappointed him on the coffee. I never did drink coffee, although most Navy people are known for how much coffee they drink.
I didn't start drinking coffee until my 30s, so I never drank coffee in the Navy, and I let the guys know that I was not drinking it, and I was not going to make it. And they thought I was pretty sassy for a little heat, too, telling people what I wasn't going to do. But I'm sure your experience, you went through officer training school. You didn't go to boot camp situation. What was that like for you?
Officer candidate school at that time was 16 weeks in Newport, Rhode Island. I was in the first anniversary class of men and women being together at officer school.
Oh, okay.
So it was still pretty brand new. I was 2 years ahead of any NJROTC women graduating and being commissioned. So it was just a transition period for women really coming into their own in the military.
Right.
But we had to learn how to swim. If you couldn't swim, you weren't commissioned.
Oh, right. But I, too, had to jump off the 3-story ladder, and we had to swim like, I won't say what the company commander said, but we had to swim pretty good because she said at some point, for those of us that were going to make the Navy a career, we would find ourselves on a ship. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, right. And if it was sinking, you'd better swim like the Dickens or you'd get sucked in the undertow. But yeah, I made it. So other than swimming, you pretty much enjoyed your time at Officer Candidate Training School?
It was pretty intense, but I'm a very regimented person anyway, so I had fewer problems than a lot of the other people did. And this is a picture of me.
Oh yes, please do show that.
When I was commissioned an ensign.
Oh, okay.
Those many years ago.
Yeah, right.
And we had to learn celestial navigation. We went out on the yard patrol craft and learned how to steer a boat.
Now, they must have told you that you did you believe that you were going to find yourself on a ship?
They didn't actually tell us that, but when you mentioned that, I was stationed in Pensacola with the Chief of Naval Education and Training, and I put the first women midshipmen on ships as part of summer training exercises.
Oh, okay.
And that was in 1978. So that was a very interesting evolution because in the meetings I attended, all the men were worried about women running through the ship in flimsy negligees, and I said, no, this isn't what it's all about for us.
Right.
And, but we had some problems with older generation.
Well, you're always going to have little bugaboos to iron out. You kind of learn as you go. But for the audience sake, I don't want to make it sound like no Navy women have ever been on ships because frankly, I'll never forget this. The gal, her last name was Seasock and I was Scott, and they called all of us. And by the time you get to the end of the alphabet, you're pretty tired of standing at attention. And they told us where we were going to go. And she got the USS Hope, I believe it was.
Which is
she
a
just
hospital
keeled
ship.
over. She passed out. I had no idea that she was a licensed vocational nurse before she went into boot camp. And she just clean passed out. She never dreamed she'd be on a ship. So you audience, there were nurses that were definitely on ships prior to the new Navy, if we want to call it that. Yeah. So where was your first? Tell us a little bit about your journey, because you retired, right? Did you do a full 20?
Yes, I did. I
Okay, well,
retired
then
as
you
a
have a-
commander. That's a picture of me in my commander dress uniform.
So tell us about some of your duty stations.
Well, I started out in the Pentagon in the Navy Command Center, and that was when they were evacuating Saigon. I was there in the command center hearing all of that.
Right.
from there I went to Pensacola and Chief of Naval Education and Training, then on to Puerto Rico. And my mother, that's where my mother and father had met, so my mother came to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And I was able to take her around and show her places she remembered, which was really neat.
I bet it was.
And then I went to San Diego.
She must have been so proud of you.
She was.
Yeah,
She was very.
Yeah. So when did you retire, Lorri?
I retired 13 years ago in 1995.
What did you do after you left the service, Lorri?
I've ended up back home where I graduated from high school, and now I am trying to help them by writing a column in the local newspaper. It's called Veterans Corner, and it's in once a month, and I'm doing that in conjunction with the VFW, the Military Officers Association, which I'm the secretary of, the Daughters of the American Revolution, and the American Legion Post, which my mother was commander of the post, and now I'm commander of the post.
You know, that is even more unique. I mean, her mother wasn't only just in the military, she was a commander at the post at Squam, right?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
now you are the commander at the post. You know, you really ought to try to get in the National American Legion magazine. I just don't, I'd be stunned if that
Has happened anywhere else.
Anywhere
yeah.
else. I think you're probably the only woman I know who can say their mother was in the service. Yeah.
So.
God bless you. We're still at war. Please pray for our men and women in harm's way.